Hi everyone, welcome to the Woolly Wonka Fibers podcast. My name is Anne and this is a video podcast about my indie dye and design business, as well as my knitting, my spinning, and some other crafty bits. Hope everybody is doing well. Today is Sunday, July 9th, 2017. So I hope that all of my US watchers had a great 4th of July. It's been hot and dry here. Hoping for our monsoons to kick in at some point. We'll see what happens. This week we are having a bunch of home maintenance repair type stuff done on the house. We have a painter coming to redo some drywall damage around our chimney inside in our kind of kitchen / eating area. We have a gas fireplace and there's a chimney flue that runs through in that section. And up at the top of it, before we had our roof replaced, we had some water damage. So he's going to repair our drywall and repaint that area and into our living room. So we moved around all the furniture so he can get to stuff. And, you know, we have this very interesting setup in our spare bathroom right now that has a couple of dining chairs stacked onto each other and some extra bottles of wine sitting on the counter along with like the toaster and coffee pot. My husband luckily is on travel this week. I say luckily because then none of that stuff has to move. I don't use either of those appliances. We can just leave it as is and he can be away this week and it won't really affect his morning rituals. We're also having some work done on a retaining wall outside by our driveway. We'll see how that goes. Originally the guy said 2 days and now he's thinking they might need to be here a week. They have to excavate all of the land on the back side of the retaining wall because there's some water damage you can see coming through on the front. So, right, we live in an area where it hardly ever rains and all the things we need to have done are rain type damage. So, go figure. Anyway, that's kind of life update here. My husband is off on travel. He'll be gone this week, home for 2 days, out again for another week, home for a day, out again for another week. So then it's August. So he's going to have a lot of time in hotels over the next month or two. So let's talk about crafty things. I don't have any knitting I can show you. I'm working on finishing up a sweater for the fall filament magazine. It's a top-down sweater and I have the sleeves done, I have the body done and the sleeves attached, and it's worked down to about the waist, so I just have to finish from the waist to the bottom hem and then that piece will be done. That is my plan for this week. And then I have another secret knitting project. I know, broken record here. That is going to be a shawl. So that's my next piece that will be for the Taos Sheep and Wool Festival. I will not be vending there, but I will be in at Mooncat Fibers on the plaza, Kathy's great little yarn store there right on Ben Street. I am going to be vending at Salida Fiber Festival the 8th and 9th, I believe it is, of September in Salida, Colorado. Great little show. Really fun town. If you have any excuse whatsoever to come and visit, please do. It's always a good time. Really well organized. I think this is their 5th year that they've done that show. Yeah, just a really good time. I always enjoy that show. So not much to talk about in terms of knitting today. Let's move right on into spinning and talk about the Tort of Fleece, which kicked off July 1st. Reminder that we have two open threads in the Woolly Wonka Fibers Ravelry group, one of which is a chat thread for folks who are participating in Team Woolly Wonka. And then we also have a finished object, an FO photos thread. So even if you aren't a hand spinner and aren't participating in the tour, definitely go and check those photos out. There's some gorgeous handspun that folks have been posting pictures of, so really excited to see all of those. And I have a finished spin. This is a superwash merino 2-ply. The colorway is Pirate Jenny, dyed by 2F by hand. And you might remember if you watched the last episode, this was originally dyed as a gradient. So it was this bright red into a kind of light brown, then black, and then that school bus yellow. So what I did to spin this skein was I split the braid in half lengthwise. So I had 2 equal halves, keeping the color sequence. And then I split each of those halves into 6 long strips, again, to keep the color sequence. And then I spun each half onto a bobbin, plied the 2 together. Now, there was a fair amount of having to break singles and like spool off some of the singles and then rejoin the yarn so that the colors mostly kept lined up. So it would be like a self-striping sock yarn. So there'll be red and then the brown and then the black and then the yellow, and then it will repeat in random widths because I did not take the time to weigh out each little 1/6 of each half, if this is making sense. So you can see there are some parts where the colors are very, very solid, like right there, that solid red will be a little block of red rounds. But there's a bit of it where, you know, I didn't get the colors exactly lined up and there's a little bit of blending. So I think it will be an interesting knit. It'll make an interesting pair of socks. They will be twins, but they won't be matchy-matchy twins. Just be interesting to see how this comes out. And I may wind up doing it where I put in some contrast for the heels, like do a plain black commercial sock yarn for the heels. I wound up with a fair amount of waste just because I was having to break off sections of the singles and reply. I still have about 350 yards of this, but I think the final skein was like 3.7 ounces. So I lost I lost 0.3 ounces of weight, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a fair amount of yardage when you're spinning sock weight yarn. So love this. It's nice and squishy. It'll be socks at some point. Not today, but finished spin. The next thing that I'm working on, and I have already started this, is a braid of Falkland wool from FatCatKnits in the Cassidy colorway. So this is just the first half, or the second half, I guess. The first half is already on my wheel. It is a combination of dark blue, a brighter kind of teal blue, some black, a rusty red, some gold. Actually, I think a very good Guy colorway, but I'm just spinning this. I have only 4 ounces of it, so maybe we'll just do socks. I don't know. I'm going to spin kind of to my default fingering weight-ish, and we'll see. I don't have any specific plans. I'm just trying to get the fiber into yarn, workable yarn. So I'm hoping to have that one done by the time I talk to you next time, you know, completely spun up and plied, and hopefully have that to show you. Again, I'm not doing anything specific for the tour in terms of yardage or weight or anything like that. I'm just spinning half an hour or more a day and picking stuff at random from my multiple bins of stash. So there's another one that I'm working on right now. So that's it for spinning. Let's talk about other stuff. I have one little project that is almost completely done that I have stitched up this week. Well, the last couple of weeks. This is a Christmas ornament from Mill Hill. It is the Pikes Peak Santa. I don't really have any place I can hold this that it's not covering it up. It's got the bald eagle, and you can see tons of beads on that. I need to put a backing on it and a hanger up here at the top. But otherwise that's done and ready to go on our Christmas tree this year. These are really fun little kits. The Mill Hill kits come with everything in them, so you get the floss, you get the beads, you get perforated paper to stitch it on. Cute. So that little guy is done. And then the other project that I'm working on in bits and pieces is this, which I know you guys have seen before. It's called Star Weaver. And it's a story keep, aka bookmark, with a wizard on it that I am doing for my dad as a holiday gift. So I have finished the top page of the pattern, and I've started on page 2. The pattern is 3 pages total. Do that. And yeah, it's blue. There's just a whole lot of blue. You can see, however, I've started right here. That funny little triangular shape is the very top of the wizard's hat. So that is right there. So I have at least moved through the boring, like, multiple stitches of blue. I'm trying to get to the halfway point of this page. It's just below this line right here. So the halfway point is just about there. So if I could get that much done over the next week, I would feel like I'm making good progress on this. And while by no means in the home stretch, I'm at least moving along. The whole pattern is 3 pages and a little bit. So if I got to the halfway point of this page, I'd be just about at the halfway point of the project. So not really a lot of interest to show you guys, but hey, I'm just keeping on the straight and narrow with what I'm working on. And then finally, I wanted to talk about some things that I'm reading. I have joined a new group on Goodreads called A Stitcher's Bookshelf, which you might find interesting. I will put a link down below. There's a couple of smaller, like every other month they read a book or 2 that you can read along and discuss. They're doing classics. For July, the 2 that they picked were Pride and Prejudice and My Cousin Rachel. So I opted to go with Pride and Prejudice, which I've read before, but I wanted to have a reread, and I went with an audiobook, which I'm so happy I did because it was delightfully fun. It was great to be able to have it read to me. The woman who did the reading is British, and she does a really nice job with the characters and just a good paced book. So I've actually finished that one. I listened to an hour or 2 a night while I was working on my knitting project and just thoroughly enjoyed it. So if you've been struggling with maybe reading some classics, I would highly recommend looking to see. A lot of times the audiobooks are free. This was a downloadable one from via our library, but I think it may also be available through Amazon. To me, it just made it a much more interesting read, and I could stay focused on the story, which, I mean, yes, I knew the story already, and, you know, I've seen multiple movie versions, and I have read it before, but it was still a fun read. I really enjoyed it, and I loved the character development that the reader gave it. It's just, I don't know, you kind of envision the characters in your head when you hear them speaking the dialogue. Maybe. The book that I'm reading this week is called, I have it up here on my Kindle because I have trouble remembering the names of things. The Lost World of the Old Ones by David Roberts. So he is an anthropologist slash archaeologist who also happens to be a rock climber, and this will be important as I tell you about this book. So about 10 years ago, well, 15 now, he wrote a book called In Search of the Old Ones. And both of these books talk about the archaeology of the Native Americans in the Four Corners region. So we're talking New Mexico, Arizona, southern Colorado, and southern Utah. And one of the things that he did in that book was he went to completely out of the way places and found petroglyphs and found archaeological sites that aren't being studied in any way, shape, or form. Many things in the cliff dwellings, which is why the point of him being a rock climber comes into this, because there's many sites that are completely inaccessible. It's not something you can walk up to. You have to be able to access them maybe only from the top of a mesa, where you have to have enough knowledge of rock climbing to be able to belay yourself down the rock face kind of thing. So he's written this book, The Lost World of the Old Ones, as kind of a follow-up. It is nonfiction, I guess I should say that, in which he's corrected some things. He's got some more up-to-date information. He's brought things up to date more with the world in like 2015. So he does touch on some of the sites that he talks about in his first book as well in this book, and talks about how things have evolved in terms of accessibility, which in most cases has been drastically curtailed. He talks about funding for studies, which again, drastically curtailed. He talks about a lot of the tensions, I guess I would call it, between the folks who are the Native Americans living on this land currently and people who are Anglos and want to study a portion of the civilization. And it's very interesting living here, because a lot of that obviously is stuff in the news. He spends a fair amount of time talking about Bandelier, which is 4 miles from my house, the Jemez Pueblo, which is 18 miles from my house. He talks about the pueblos up and down kind of our main artery in the state, which is just to the east of us, and it talks about the pueblos at Taos, Powaki, Nambe, the ones like Isleta that are closer down to Albuquerque. He talks about sites that you've probably heard of, like Mesa Verde, which is in Colorado, as well as some of the sites that are in southern Utah into Arizona that aren't officially on a map, I guess I would say. He talks about Chaco Canyon. That whole chapter is really, really interesting. So I think he does a really good job of, I'm about 60% of the way through the book. I think he does a really good job of balancing, trying to be respectful of somebody's history. He's very, very respectful of things like the physical remains of a society. So not only burials, but pottery and their building structures and artwork, anything like that. He is very, very respectful of that. But he brings up some of the questions that are noticeable here if you live in the area. Things like, there's large sections of the reservations that are completely cut off unless you live on the reservation, unless you are a Native American who lives in that pueblo or in that area. You can't even I couldn't drive my car in on a road that my taxes have paid for and just look at things in a respectful way. I'm not suggesting I would do anything, to vandalize anything, but the land is completely shut off. You can't even get onto certain parts unless you have a guide who is like one of the tribal council members. And there's a lot of like friction about that where, the reservations do have a lot of land under their control in this area, and they aren't open to anyone else. And even if you try to be respectful and say, I would like to get a backcountry permit and I will fill out the paperwork and I will, abide by whatever rules you have set up, the answer is just no. And I think that they are sometimes doing themselves a disservice where, if nobody knows about the amazing thing that needs to be saved or the amazing things that need to be studied, you can't turn around and say no one gives us money to preserve this if no one even knows it's there, I guess is where I'm going with this. So I understand it's a thorny question. I obviously am not Native American. I don't have any of that history behind me. So I can't speak from that point of view, but you just can't have it both ways, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the author tries to say that as well in a nice way in the book. And not to say that at some point in the past, horribly invasive things have happened where archaeologists have gone in, and I'm talking like 1920s, even into the 60s and early 70s, where they would go in and pick up all of the artifacts from an area and take them off to some museum in Boston. That's not necessarily what I would want done with my cultural heritage, but that's also not today. And so I think there has to be a balance with, understanding that there are people who are going to take advantage of a site, but also understanding that there are people who are really trying to do good work and help tell a story that maybe has been undertold in terms of American history. Getting off my soapbox now. So anyway, that's what I'm reading. Very interesting read. If you have any interest at all in the Southwest history, culture of the Native peoples, highly recommend it. I think it's, like I said, a good balanced book, and I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me. It's a hot button, but this author's opinion, anyway, he's doing a pretty good job being fairly balanced. We're having doggy dreams on the floor, so I apologize if you can hear the snorkeling and running in place. Anyway, I think that's it for me today. I hope you guys are having a great summer wherever you are. I will be back in a couple of weeks to do another update. And so until I talk to you guys again, have a great couple of weeks. Enjoy your summer, whatever that is in your neck of the woods, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.